I think the main thing that I want to share in speaking about being a a support person, and maybe you can, maybe some of this resonates with you on the people that have helped you, but I think the main thing is to have the skill of patience and to remove yourself from the situation and not take things personally. Because if you get on unstable ground as a support person, you're not going to be super helpful.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast. My name is JP, and this week's episode is brought to you by Flow Formulas. If you are training for a big event coming up or just training in general, you need Flow Formulas in your bottles and in your recovery. And when you go and purchase your next order of Flow Formulas, I got a discount code for you to cut down on that cost a little bit. You can use the code JohnPeter15 at checkout for a discount. Now, my guest this week is Andrew Lespy, L Esperance. He is a professional mountain bike and gravel racer for Maxxis Factory Racing, and we are going to dig in here shortly. But before we do, if you like the podcast, do me a favor and share it with your friends. And also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give us a 5-star review, please and thank you. All right, enough of all that. Let's get Lespy in the studio. Well, Andrew L'Esperance, or Lespy, or Andrew, I've heard you called a lot of different things, but welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast. It is really good to have you here, and you are currently on the West Coast, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. Currently in Santa Cruz, California right now, just doing a couple weeks of training before the first races of the year.
All right, and what do you have on tap for those first few races this season?
Yeah, so on the 22nd, flying over to Spain to do Andalusia. It's a 6-day mountain bike stage race. It's a pairs race, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, going to be doing that with my new teammate, Sean, on Maxxis Factory Racing. And yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting the season started.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I have heard you on a number of podcasts. We've crossed paths a little bit online through some sharing of partners or sponsors, I guess. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I've almost always heard you in the podcast settings with your partner, Haley, and rarely have I gotten to hear you just talk on your own. And it's not that I don't want to talk to Haley at some point, but I think there's a lot of value in where we're going to go with this conversation today. And in the couple of conversations where we have had the chance to just hear you, the host is usually like jump straight into whatever you're doing, whether it's Whiskey Off-Road or talking about the clothing apparel company you used to be with in the past. And I want to hear more of like your story or get to know, like if we sat down for a cup of coffee, my question would be like, how did you get to be a pro bike racer? My friend Kelly McGelkey we joke about like, tell me zero to like pro license. And how did you get here doing this? Because that's a huge part of where everything else in the conversation is going to go.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a big question, a long story, I guess, but I'll try to keep it brief. Yeah, I grew up, I'm Canadian. I grew up on the east coast of Canada in a small province called Nova Scotia. Grew up just outside the capital city of that province, Halifax. And yeah, I'm the youngest of 4 boys in a family. So yeah, and grew up kind of in a sort of outdoor lifestyle. We grew up on a outside the city, plenty of woods to play in and around. Grew up on the water, so plenty of time spent like hiking along the coast. Hiking as a family, that sort of thing, sailing, and I definitely, being outdoors was a big part of my life growing up. I did a lot of different sports, a variety of sports, school sports. Probably the more competitive one that I did before cycling or while I was cycling when I was younger was diving, like springboard diving. Um, and I took that to a certain level and retired at age 15, as you sometimes do with these sorts of sports. Uh, but yeah, essentially, my family and I, we were lucky to have bikes around. We rode bikes on vacations. And being the youngest of four boys, I looked up to my older brothers. I followed them in everything that they did. And especially so to my oldest brother, whom there's a fairly large age gap. I think it's about 12 years. And at one point, like he rode mountain bikes with his friends, and he did a race, and I just wanted to be my older brother. So as soon as he did a race, I wanted to do one, and yeah, we had a local Tuesday night short track series in Halifax, and I showed up to that and kind of just kept climbing the rungs for since then. So that was when I was 12, and I've kind of been doing some version of bike racing full time, and obviously lots of stuff along the way, working at a bike shop, doing an engineering degree, um, running my own team, racing for other teams. And but yeah, just I think I always wanted to be a professional athlete, and I've just been working at it for a long period of time. And I sometimes say that I'm a really good trier. I just keep trying, and that's what I've been doing. And yeah, here I am.
Here you are, indeed. You, I can remember the first time I came across you was probably 2018 or 2019, and of course, seeing your name on the World Cups as the lists of people would come through the line, and I remember that you were referenced as Haley's partner, and
Yeah,
she had just had a big race. It might have been a Novi Mesto. But I remember like putting you two together, and you were both racing on Norco at the time, I believe. And talk us through that world of racing World Cups, and like just you said, I just kept climbing the rungs of the ladder. What was it like from you go to racing like grassroots short track, which is like one of the best ways to get into racing for a kid. Like it's super fun, but
totally.
you also like bleed out of your eyeballs, but like not in a long way. It's like, well, that was done quick. You go from that super short stuff and like work your way through to all of a sudden you are at Novi Mesto, you're at Albstadt, you're at these huge races with millions of people watching on Red Bull at the time. What was that like to go and race those races and that be like, this is my job?
Yeah, I mean it's still it's still not lost on me, like the like being at these big international races. It's pretty special. Um, and yeah, I mean, like I said, it was just kind of climbing the ladder. From the short track races, you do a provincial race. I guess it would in the US it would be the equivalent of like a state, a state series race, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you go to an out of province race or national championships. And then I think my first opportunity with the Canadian national team was after I performed at a national series race or national champs, and then I got invited to do. At that time, there was still junior World Cups. The junior category was still included in the World Cups. So I did a project or a trip where I did the Mont Saint Anne World Cup and the Bromont World Cup, and I did pretty well there. And then yeah, I managed to perform well, and kind of keep getting those opportunities and being in a position to say yes. And yeah, and then all the way till racing on Norco factory team where it is more of a professional thing. It's your job. At that point, I'm partners with Haley. Yeah, and I mean that race in particular you're talking about was extremely special because that was one where Haley finished on the podium, which is, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. It was an incredible performance. And being part of that was super special. I remember that moment super vividly. I was out on course watching Haley race, and there's sort of a bit of, in that uh, finishing section at Nova Mesto, there's sort of a section of pavement, not right beside the course, but yeah, and I remember riding towards the finish on that pavement, and I think I had my hands up while she was going across the line, and yeah, it was a special, special moment for sure. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question there, but
No, it's all good. There's two things. Her celebration at the finish line of that is, to me, like, there there could be a lot of other memories in my head watching mountain bike racing over the years that would be burned in my head, but hers, getting that podium and celebrating and like mouthing an expletive like F yeah, is like one of the things that I'm just like, yes. I think it's so incredible because you feel for the underdog that you guys with the Norco team, what you were trying to accomplish and what you did accomplish. But I want to talk about for you personally, like as you're coming through those steps, you go from provincials to like on a much bigger scale to national team to all of a sudden you're realizing like, I think this can become my job, this thing I love doing. Where was your mentality at, like going into those races? Were those things you were nervous about? Because to me, Andrew has a show, Off Roads, Inroads. I don't know if you guys are going to continue it, but in the past, if you've listened to it, you are a super chill guy. To me, you don't seem like if the house started on fire, you're going to be the person like going crazy on the way out. You're going to calmly like, okay, everybody calm down. We need to do this. So as you're approaching all these races for the first time, like potentially like life defining or career defining races, how were you dealing with that internally?
Mm. Yeah, it's
Or did you have people around you kind of helping you deal with that internally?
yeah, 100%. I worked with a coach for 10 years before that, and for like most of my XCO career working with him. And obviously, uh, yeah, he was a huge help in supporting me along the way and helping with mindset. I also work with uh, sport performance consultant, or like mental performance consultant. They have lots of different titles, but yeah, and she also just I worked with her for about 5 years, and yeah, just helped me massively in dealing with. I mean, yeah, just the stresses surrounding racing because they're definitely there. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Expectations are high, and yeah, I think uh, it was a very gradual process as I climbed those kind of ranks when pressure increased, the scale of things increased, and yeah, you just kind of learn to deal with it along the way with the support of those people that I mentioned, and that's sort of um, that's what happened for me, and uh, it always didn't go smoothly. There's definitely some moments where I would break down and not be able to deal, but yeah, that's where you lean on the people around you. That being Haley, my coach, mental performance consultant, those sorts of people.
For sure. So you race XC exclusively, pretty much through 2021, and then this big new sexy monster comes onto the scene called the Lifetime Grand Prix,
Mm.
and you make yourself you make your way into it. What was the transition like to decide? Was part of it that like Norco wasn't going to be a thing, or did it not become a thing because you and Haley moved on from it? Or what was the main thrust to get you to go from like, hey, all we do is race World Cups and XCO, that's our main focus, to like, we're going to go do stuff like Unbound and Leadville and Crusher, these races that are like so far off the radar, I would think, for a pro XC person.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this style of racing wasn't that far off the radar. Um, I I really enjoy this sort of what I classify as adventure racing, at least compared to World Cup XCO. Uh, and ever since in 2017, Haley and I did Croc Trophy, which is a 8-day mountain bike stage race in Australia. And that sort of kind of opened our eyes to this other side of the sport. And since then, uh, we always managed to find time at the beginning of the season or the end of the season to add in one of these sort of adventure races. So for us, that was, I mean, I did Epic Israel a couple times, Swiss Epic. There was, yeah, probably a couple others, some US races, Iceman, these sorts of things that are just, they're, they're exciting because they're different, different skill sets. They're valuable because they do allow you to like learn some different things compared with, doing a 90-minute XCO. They also help you kind of expand your perspective on what's possible. It's a different thing doing an 8-day stage race versus a 90-minute XCO, and you can learn a lot about yourself doing that. But yeah, long story short, well, this racing has been on my radar for a while, and I think I always knew in the back of my mind that I would try to find my way there, try to find my way to this sort of racing. Before the pandemic, I threw my name in for the lottery for Unbound, and I had a spot. So this is about 2 years before I joined Maxxis Factory Racing, and with the pandemic and then team schedules and that sort of thing, I had to defer it a few years. Um, and I never actually got to use it. I ended up giving it away because by the time I was in a position to use it, I was in the Grand Prix. But yeah, I mean, joining Maxxis Factory Racing, it was a combination of things. The timing was right. Um, and I sort of, that year, 20, 2021 was super tough for both Haley and I. And yeah, I did not have that good a season, but I was able to pull together one result, and I won BC Bike Race. And that timing was really good for the formation of um, Maxxis Factory Racing, and it was a very solid result on a known race in this sort of space where this team was focusing. And yeah, that helped me with that opportunity, and we were able to get Haley on board as well. And then yeah, that's where we were for the next 2 years.
So let's talk through your evolution kind of in the Lifetime Grand Prix. 2022, you finished sixth overall, and you start off 2023. You get fifth in the points at Sea Otter last year, and everything's great. Talk us through kind of the first year, I guess, and like it was a full transition from like I chase XCO and I chase World Cups, and sometimes when I can, I go do these stage races, but mainly it's XCO to these big races, and it's going pretty good. And then, yeah, I guess let's pause when we get to Sea Otter a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, going into first off, we didn't, Maxxis factory racing certainly was not focused 100% on the Grand Prix, um, for 2022. Uh, it was built around we did a lot of racing that year, and we did our best with it. We're learning a little bit more how to structure our schedules for these long races. But yeah, 2022 was a big year. It was a big year of learning. I remember reviewing the season at the end of the year, and I was kind of, I guess I was just categorizing racing as ones that were completely new to me and ones that were familiar to me. And it was more than two-thirds of the racing was all new, which is super significant because there is a lot of uh, benefits to having experience at these races, knowing how the race plays out, the flow of things, the terrain, all these pieces that are as important or more important as your kind of physical preparation to perform in these races. So, yeah, it was all new, which was a challenge, but it was also super exciting. And yeah, the season overall went very well. Yeah, I finished sixth overall. I think going into Big Sugar, it was myself, Lachlan, and Rob Britton all tied for points. Um, and Big Sugar would determine the order of us. And I came in on top of that, which was, uh, yeah, I mean, to still hold it together that deep in the season, I was really proud of. And um, yeah, so I was super happy with the performance there. I think it also has to be mentioned that, 2022 was the first year for the Grand Prix. It was new for everybody. Everyone was in this position of learning on how everything worked, how to, you know, I think a lot of people struggled with performing, um, or at least some people struggled with like performing for that length of time, basically from April till end of October. And this was not really a new thing for myself or Haley. Like we had been doing this for a little bit. We would do racing late in the season, and we knew how we responded to that. But what I'm getting at is the level came up in 2023 for sure,
Yeah.
and I just I had some bad luck along the way, but I also just didn't bring my level up enough to meet that. Um, and part of that is the races that I focused on and the scheduling and the number of races that I did. And yeah, so,
Well, because you
you
certainly
know,
did have some really good results in 23. You
yeah,
get third at Whiskey Off Road. You win the stage of the Belgium Mountain Bike Classic. You win BC Bike Race again, that was a big deal. I
yeah,
remember seeing that not just on your social media, but all over the place. And you won a UCI gravel race in Canada. So people can look at, if they just look at your Lifetime Grand Prix results past Sea Otter, they might think you didn't have a good season, but your results outside of the Grand Prix were awesome.
totally. Yeah.
And so how did you feel about your season, and how did you feel, I guess, about your prospects of like what am I going to do in 2024? Was it clear cut for you that like I'm not getting in, or were you like I have no idea?
Yeah. I mean, thanks. It was kind of 2023 was a mixed bag. Like you said, there was some really great rides, and some races that I really enjoyed, and then yeah, a little bit of bad luck in the Grand Prix. But yeah, uh, at the end of the Grand Prix season, it just felt like I didn't give it. It just didn't feel good to finish in the spot that I did. It wasn't the best that I could do. So I I was hoping I would get in again. I was lucky to get in for 24, and it's yeah, I definitely have some unfinished business there. I want to, the levels coming up, it's probably coming up again. And I would like to meet that and try to perform against yeah, some of the best riders in North America, and a lot of international riders are coming too. So it's a, I mean, the thing I really love about the Grand Prix is that it is super competitive. There's a lot of, it's no, I love I like a lot of the events in the Grand Prix. There's nothing there for me in terms of like a technical mountain bike race, and I can find that elsewhere. There's going to be plenty of mountain bike racing on my schedule that's going to scratch that itch. But yeah, the what draws me into the Grand Prix is this, just everyone's there, everyone's focusing on it, the level's super high. You need to perform super well on the day, have some luck, and it's being in that sort of position racing is it's super cool. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun.
So when you go through a season like you did, you have the like highest of highs, winning BC Bike Race, doing well in these, in Belgium in this race, stage race, and then you have like Lifetime Grand Prix results that everybody in America that's stoked on racing pays more attention to maybe. How hard is it? Because I'm digging through your social media as I'm getting ready for this interview, and I just look at some of your posts after Lifetime Grand Prix races that didn't exactly go well. Obviously, Unbound is probably the top of your list, where you're like, I did not plan to pet kittens today. I wanted to race my bike.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I'm curious of the mentality, like, I'm an amateur. If my race doesn't go well, I can, like, it's no big deal. And people come here to hear stories just about living life with mental health and how I look at things. It's totally different for you because it's your job. How hard is it to post about things on a bad day when you know a lot of people out there just want you to get to the point where you tell them what place you got or how it really went? Is there hesitation in that? I've kind of got the vibe in the pro field where people are starting to be like, I'm going to truth tell on here a little bit more about how I actually feel.
Mm.
What is it like to share those things? And I think that's a really good thing if we're going to truth tell a little more and not be so like, pro lifestyle is just the sexiest thing ever, because I think you guys are grinding through this, like, it is your job, and yet we're supposed to all think that it's this just like unbelievable, you get to go do your hobby and that's so fun, right?
Mm.
And I don't think that's reality. And so
Yeah.
what is it like as a pro when you have to post and you haven't had the best day?
Yeah, I think I try on my social media to not make the primary story about the results. I think there's a whole lot more that goes on out there compared with the results, or along with what happens. Um, people, uh, I mean, people like success stories. They like being a part of that. So of course, when we have success, it's great to share. It's great for our sponsors. So we do that. But I mean, that's sort of part of the motivation between with off-road inroads is providing a little bit more context to what happens out on the race course. And sort of my favorite parts of bike racing are those kind of post-ride storytelling moments where you're just trying to sort through what happened on the day, because it's everything, so much happens. It all happens so quickly. And yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part. And I do try to share that as much as I can. And I think I mean, it's for my own benefit too. It's kind of like I don't get that anxiety about posting about a bad race because I try not to make that like the only thing I talk about.
That's what I was
Yeah.
going to ask you is you said like I try not to focus on the result. That was your like very first thing you said to my question. Is that because that's just how you naturally think? Like you get back to the house or whatever and you and Haley you're just like this is what happened, not necessarily this is my place.
I think it's a mixture. I'm a highly competitive person, but I also see the nuance and the value to what we're doing. You're not every day is not going to be absolutely perfect. And the like I really love the experience of bike racing and sharing about that is uh I mean that's important to me. I think that's valuable and I hopefully people appreciate it. But yeah, I don't know if I if I answered your question there.
No,
But I
it's all
mean,
good.
I think throughout a season, um, I'm gonna try to show up to most races uh, in having done my homework, preparation, all those things to give myself a shot at a good performance, and it may or may not happen. And there's some races that suit me better than others. Um, and in general, like we're mostly going to be losing these
Yeah.
races. Like so I think you do have to keep that in mind when wins do come around. It's like it's amazing. It feels really good. It makes all those other days where things might not go so well even better. Um, but I think probably the more important thing to share is that I I've been doing this for a long time, and if I was super hard on myself or super upset after every day that didn't go perfectly, then I wouldn't still be racing. Like it's just too hard to beat yourself up like that all the time. And I'm not sure exactly when I decided to not do that. Um, it was probably working with my coaches or sports mental performance consultant or maybe just Haley. But yeah, at one point decided just not to worry about it as much and take it all, keep the bigger picture in mind. And yeah, not die by one bad race result or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. You've talked a lot about Haley and her importance in all of this, and if people aren't paying attention by this point, they haven't. You've threaded her in through all of this, and I haven't asked you directly about her yet, and I think that's awesome, and I think it speaks to your relationship, and and that is my next question: is what is it like to do life when your partner does the exact same thing as you do, and sometimes has been a lot more successful. When we speak specifically about like World Cup mountain bike racing, and she was on the
Sometimes,
podium.
just
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
we talked about 2019 earlier, and she gets fifth at Albstadt, and then like 2 weeks later or the next week gets third at Nove Mesto. And yeah, what is it like to live life together like that and share in each other's successes, and also get to cheer her on as she does her thing? Yeah, I don't even know where to go
Yeah.
with it. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it's not, again, it's like these things are all things you learn through experience on how to deal with it. There was definitely times where I had feelings of jealousy or feeling less than when comparing myself to Haley, as as maybe most people would, just because she is she's been very successful in this sport. Um, but again, it's just something, like it wasn't really serving me. It doesn't help our relationship. It makes me feel makes me feel worse, and it also detracts from me celebrating her success, if I'm focused on myself or how I'm feeling about it. So, yeah, over time, I've learned we've both learned to celebrate each other. And if one of us is having a good day, then we're both winning. Of course, there's a bit of competitiveness there. We sometimes joke about uh, well, we'll definitely just if we both did well or something, we'll joke about who did better or stuff along those lines. But yeah, it's a process. The great thing about doing this together is we get to do it together. So yeah, we're doing this sport requires a lot of travel, a lot of time on the road, and the benefit of us doing it together is that we don't have to say goodbye when we kind of go to work, go to races. That does bring on some challenges as well. Like for example, when we raced World Cups, yeah, I mean, it's tricky to remove yourself from being a partner and being concerned about your partner's performance, how they're racing, that sort of thing, um, while you're trying to also focus on what you're doing. So, at the World Cup, for example, the elite women race a few hours before we do. So there's always that, if something happens to Haley in that race, or she's having a bad day or something, that may or may not affect how I race. I think I generally got pretty good at not engaging.
How
Basically, I
how
had
long
to.
how long did that take you to learn that?
I don't really know. Um, yeah, I don't really know. It was just the skill of focusing on what I needed to do, and I think I probably just connected it to task. Like these are the things that I need to do before I race, and keep myself focused on those things so that there's not space. We'd also worked together to um, maybe not even see each other before I raced. Just because then, yeah, there's not that opportunity
Hmm.
to affect one another. But now it's interesting. We race together. Like sometimes we start, and it's a whole new thing. Like at Unbound this year, Haley. So I got caught up in the mud. Trailer got ripped off. That was kind of the end of the day, and Haley passed me while I was kind of race over on the side of the trail. So that's also a really interesting challenge for her because she sees,
Was there an interaction?
yes, for sure. I explained briefly what had happened, and then she just kept rolling. I forget what she said, but I don't know, maybe some words of encouragement. But, you know, she knew the kind of preparation I put into this, the kind of
Mhm.
form that I was in after the stage race in Belgium. And yeah, it was definitely heartbreaking. And she definitely took that on. And then she was also on like a challenging day, as everyone was at that race last year.
For
And
sure.
she had another 10 hours to go after she saw me there. So yeah, there's tons of benefits to doing this with your significant other. And there's also lots of challenges that, have taken time to learn how to manage, and yeah, do our best with.
Well, and you're entering a new period in your life together, essentially, and that you're not going to be, or you're not on the same team for the first time in, did you tell me 11 or 12 years that you have been
Yeah,
on the same team?
yeah, yeah.
What?
That's
Yeah, tell us about like what have those conversations been like between you two as you just think about like obviously some things are going to totally stay the same and some things are going to be very different.
yeah, yeah. Kind of these conversations started in the summer, when Haley was talking with different teams for different options, and yeah, I think a lot of the conversations with us were just surrounding whether it's a good opportunity for her and how can we make it work together. And there was two things there, like um, I guess a lot of the decision making was based around, yeah, the opportunity, and then leaving, against leaving being teammates with me or leaving Maxxis Factory Racing. Um, and yeah, I think we talked through it. It was it took a while actually. Um, like it wasn't a one night conversation. It probably we slowly talked about it over a couple months. Um, and I don't think it fully sunk in until I think I actually forget where I was going, but I wrote an Instagram post about it. Maybe it was on my way to California to do the ride down the coast with my friend Rob. Um, but I wrote it out. I wrote it out on Instagram to do a post, and then it was like, whoa! It kind of sunk in, and the uh, it felt very real. But but yeah, I think the other side of the conversation was like, how can this be good for us? I think space is also good in relationships. I think we'll have lots more to talk about maybe since we're spending a little less time together. Um, and I think some of the conversations are just trying to make the time that we do spend together just maybe a little better, higher quality.
No, I was
But
just going to say I think everybody's kind of excited for both of you and also like couples that do a lot of things together. We're kind of watching and being like, yeah, this is exciting. Because you're both also like very chill people, and so we have utmost faith this is going to be really good. Um, but yeah, it's just always interesting to hear the thought process of how you arrived where you did.
yeah, yeah, and I mean things are always changing in life, so I think yeah, you got to roll with it and make the best out of this, whatever path gets laid out in front, and roll with it, and yeah, we'll do our best and we'll have some fun with it. And yeah, I mean, we're here in Santa Cruz together. We're still getting to do a lot of this thing together. We'll probably get the opportunity to do maybe a couple races without our teams and just the two of us. Races that aren't on the team schedule. So that will be good. And of course, we'll be at 90% of the same races. So we'll just have to, maybe we'll get to sleep better because we won't be sharing a bed. But yeah, maybe that'll be the main performance benefit there.
So I would be remiss to bring you on the show. Obviously, we're going to talk about bikes and mentality, and we've done a ton of that so far. But I'm always going to talk about mental health, and I'm pretty targeted about who I bring on. Um, you threw your hand up in the air last year when I was working on a collaboration with Flow Formulas and Nina Machina for Mental Health Awareness Month. And like I've been dying to ask you like in person, like And I think I know the answer, but I just want to talk through like why is getting out there and being vocal about mental health awareness such an important thing to you? And I think that's going to transition us probably into our last question, but let's start there. Is like why were you so eager to just speak about the importance of that?
I mean, I think, I guess because of my relationship with Haley, she's very outspoken about it. I've learned a lot about it well, yeah, to try to support her along the way, that it's not like a big stretch for me to talk about it. I feel like it's a you know, part of the conversations that we have. And it's a real thing we talk about. And yeah, so it wasn't like a big stretch for me to put up my hand there and support what you were doing and support our sponsor. So, yeah, I think that's probably the main piece. And yeah, I think I guess I'm in a unique, maybe not a super unique position, but I am in a position to share with like on the side of things of supporting someone that
For
has
sure,
mental
for
health
sure, and
challenges.
yeah, for sure, and that's as we messaged back and forth, like that's one of the primary reasons I wanted to have this discussion with you because Taylor Ladine and I can sit down and talk, and that he's the previous guest. But
Yeah.
he and I can sit down and talk about our own struggles, and a lot of people are going to relate to that. But what I often hear as I've started to go and speak, and as I talk to other people, and as I teach, is so many people are scared to go and get help if they need it themselves because they're scared of everyone around them thinking what they're going to think, whether it's their loved ones or their friends or their parents or their spouse. And I can remember being in that same situation. And I look at you, and you're a guy who you were there with Haley, and as she was going through her struggles, and you're still standing there super strong. And I think you can speak much better to everyone from the support place, like you just
Mm.
said, and put words to it. And I guess so that's kind of where I want to start is like you lived this with her. We talked earlier about her coming across the line in Novi Mesto, and she's third, and she, has this awesome celebration. And then over the next like 2 years, everything kind of falls apart on her.
Mm. Yeah.
And, you don't need to necessarily tell her story and tell how things fell apart or why, but I want to hear more of like, you're sitting there watching all this go on. Did you know right away this is a mental health issue, or were you just kind of like, man, something's wrong? And I like, yeah, take us through it, man. I don't know
Yeah.
how to give it a lot of work. I haven't lived your position. I've lived her position.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, Haley was diagnosed and hospitalized for an eating disorder quite young. So mental illness has been there um, for a little bit, and I was familiar with that. But yeah, it is really tricky because when you live with someone, the decline it doesn't happen all at once, or like the challenges that arise with it. It's not just a light switch. It's super gradual. At least that's my experience. Um, so it is hard to it's hard to like step out of that and be like, okay, this is a tough position. We need to act on this. We need to get some help. And so that's a tricky thing. But I think the main thing that I want to share in speaking about being a kind of a support person, and maybe you can, maybe some of this resonates with you on the people that have helped you, but I think the main thing is to have the skill of patience and to remove yourself from the situation and not take things personally. Because if you get on unstable ground as a support person, you're not going to be super helpful. Um, and it is extremely it's I mean it's challenging. And so yeah, through practice, I think I was able to stay quite calm, and be able to be continue to be supportive if there was yeah, just some challenges arising, like a particularly bad day, a lot of anxiety, those sorts of things. And I think I would also add that I had people to support me so that I didn't have to lean so much on Haley, and when she wasn't really in a position to offer a ton of support. So I leaned heavily on my coach and my mental performance consultant in um, those months, because yeah, that was the best opportunity for me to support my own mental health while yeah, and just yeah, talk to somebody else about it. Um, so I think that's kind of like the main things. I don't know if you have any questions on that, or if
No,
that resonates with you on maybe your experience.
most definitely. And like obviously you said you dealt with this like you knew dealt with not the right term. You knew what Haley had dealt with prior with the eating disorder and those pieces, and you were already married at this time. Is that correct?
Um,
Kind of in the like you got married right around the pandemic, is that right?
we got married in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So we
Pre-pandemic or
were
in the middle of the
pre
mess?
in the mess. Yeah, but we had
Okay.
been together for a lot of years before that.
Okay. And then she became very vocal about her struggles, I would say like in 21. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I think there was probably some stuff before that, but something like that.
Okay. And I guess my big question is, or not my question, my point is that like you were you were her like closest loved one through a lot of the stuff she's gone through. And so many times we worry when we need to ask for help that like, man, what are our loved ones going to think of us? You weren't going anywhere, is my guess.
Totally, exactly. It doesn't really change anything for me. Like uh, we had been together for a long time. We were engaged. We were going to get married or were married, and we had committed to each other. So it's just yeah, it's not really changing anything.
You were going to
It's
figure this out.
exactly, yeah, both of us were. And it's I mean a ton of work on her end and some work on my end to get through it, and we did, and yeah.
You had mentioned watching, the decline is like and I would say like kind of like a fader more than a light switch.
Mm.
And for you, you said I had to learn how to deal with this or how to like work through this myself. Was your process kind of to where you are today? Was that also kind of like a fader versus a light switch, or were there some of those light bulb moments along the way for you?
Yeah, probably a mixture. I do think I think sport gives you the opportunity to learn a lot of different things, in the context of sport, but that are super helpful in life. So I think there's probably a lot of learning both through coaches, mentors, other people I've worked with, and a lot of reading I've done, just on mental performance, um, these sorts of things. So I think, um, it was sort of a combination of reaching to grab a few tools that I might have had in my toolbox, and then maybe sharpening them, for this situation. Um, yeah, I'd say that's sort of, so like, yeah, a mixture of you know building up the skill set to or yeah, building up the skill set to um, help support in the situation as best I could. And I think I should also say that it's not like I was very good all the time at it. I probably, yeah, didn't. I probably didn't deal with some situations as best I could, but sometimes you either don't have the energy or you're just not in a position to. And yeah,
But ultimately, you kept putting in the work, and
totally. Yeah,
that's super valuable to hear. That oftentimes people in that support role don't understand as they see their loved one needing the help that they need to start putting some work into to understand kind of what the heck's actually going on here, or how can I best be of service. And
yeah,
so, and you mentioned toolbox for yourself. Taylor and I talk a lot about our own personal toolbox for how we work through all this. And this is like we're a community, and we all have to have our part. And some of us need a different kind of toolbox than everybody else, but ultimately we all have them so that we can support one another. And I think that's so well said on your part.
well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I do. Yeah, I think I don't know what your background is early on in sport, but I do think there's just an like incredible value to sport for building up like life experiences and life lessons that are going to help you with shit stuff that's far more important than sport, like supporting your loved one. So I see that as, I mean, I see sport as just practice for life. And both of us, everyone, we're all going to come across stuff that's way more important, um, challenging, and yeah, hopefully sport will have prepared us to meet those challenges in the best possible way.
For sure. And you will smile when I say this, but for anybody who's a parent or coach that is like, how do I do this? How do I implement this stuff? The number one book that changed my life about 15 years ago as a coach was I came across the long-term athletic development model that was coming out of Canada. It
Yeah.
today it today can be bought as a textbook on Amazon. Don't cough at the price. It's totally worth every dollar of it. It will tell you how to talk to kids at certain ages. It will tell you activities. It will break your brain on life paradigm on how to teach kids how to play sport and what's important and what's not. And it truly, when we start to look at sport in that way, whatever the sport is, it changes why we walk out there every day, whether it's ourselves or with kids, because it does get into all these other things that are so much more important. And I love talking to Canadian athletes because I can always tell that you've come through like some form of that thinking, or through your Olympic training programs also are like really built heavily around this LTAD model. And it's kind of a foreign concept in the United States to really embrace these ideas because they're so like opposite of how we tend to think about sports here in America. But yeah, LTAD model, long-term athletic development, it'll change your life. Parents should read it too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I've had two primary coaches in my life, and they would have gone through the coaching program in Canada based on the LTAD. And the coach I worked with the longest, yeah, probably helped shape some of that. yeah, interesting, interesting to hear that you can see a trend. But yeah, yeah, no doubt I've been influenced by that model, and yeah.
It's amazing. It's truly amazing. And like I found it when it was like a PDF you could print online, and it was like in its like beta mode, which would have been, like I said, like 15 years ago. But now they have the research and they show it works, and it's awesome. So
Yeah, cool. Very cool.
Andrew, thanks for being on today. This has been a really good conversation, really incredible, and went a few places I didn't expect to go, but it's great. And where can people find you on socials or wherever if they want to follow along with your story or get in touch with you?
Yeah, but thanks a lot for having me. First off, John, I appreciate it, and yeah, best place to find me is on Instagram. I try my best to share the story, share the journey over there. My handle is Andrew Lespy, at Andrew Lespy. And yeah, not sure what we're doing with our podcast this year, for the coming year, but maybe you'll hear me on there as well. And that's the Off-Road Inroads podcast.
We hope it resumes, because it is the soundtrack of a lot of my training rides. So it's
thank you.
It's good, chill stuff. Andrew, thanks for joining us today. This is Maxxis Factory Racing, Andrew L Esperance. Thanks for listening today. If you're looking for more content, you can head over to the Stable Cyclist YouTube channel, where the feature-length film Madahe just dropped a week ago. Also, if you want to follow along with me on Instagram, you can find me at The Stable Cyclist. The Stable Cyclist podcast is a twice-monthly show where we talk about bikes, mentality, and mental health. Thanks for listening. Have an amazing day, and most importantly, remember you are loved.